Hey guys, this is Benny here, owner and head roaster at Mi Mundo Coffee House and Roastery, and I'm here to do another masterclass with you, specifically now on a different brewing method from what I did before, the French press. So let's get into it quickly. As before, we talked about the pour over. The pour over was more of a cleaner way of brewing coffee. So you had a paper filter, or we had a mesh filter before. And how we brew that coffee with the pour over is that we had hot water and a filter, and we poured water in a uniform manner that actually flows through the coffee bed. French press is a different type of brewing method. French press, we call it as immersion brewer. So looking at the French press here, there's nothing really flowing through. You're gonna put some coffee grounds, basically coffee grounds, into a vessel, a French press vessel. Pour hot water in the vessel and let it steep, kind of like tea. So the main difference, when we talked about the pour over, well, hot water is passing through the coffee bed. So we talk about extraction of coffee and all of the wonderful flavors. With pour over, we're doing a quick hot water passing through a coffee bed, which means the immediate immediate flavors that comes from coffee will be passed through and extracted, which means a cleaner cup, you get more of the highlighted flavors, but you don't get some of the flavors that you would get if there was more water or more time for that water to extract some of that flavor from the coffee. So when we talk about French press, immersion brewing, this is where coffee and water mix together for a longer period of time. And the highlight of that is that you're gonna get a lot more heavier, full body flavors than you would do as a pour over. But with that said, it's not gonna be as clean and easy to identify some flavors, as there's more complexity to the cup of coffee. So pros and cons, but it just depends on what's your preferred brewing method and what you want out of your cup of coffee. So when we talk about French press, sorry. The French press, I think most people would have one of these in the house. It's probably the simplest brewing method you can do. It's really easy. One of these you can get for $10, $20 in almost any grocery store. And you pretty much only need a very minimum amount of equipment. So you got the French press, you got obviously your beans, recommended scale, your what's called hot water. So we use a pour over kettle mainly just to control the flow of water, but also control our temperature. And you don't have to have one of these. If you can find a way to measure your temperature or get an idea, a cheap kettle will work. We got your grinder here. Grinding fresh is really important. You don't have to, but the reason why we grind fresh is, one, the better flavor, but also, like what we talk about pour over, you really need to get a specific grind size for the brew method, and that depends on the way that brew method extracts and brews the coffee. So let's talk about grind size. So with the pour over, we wanted more of a medium grind size, and then you would go finer or coarser depending on what flavor you want. With the French press, because you're immersing water with coffee for longer, you want to go coarser. So a lot of people talk about going really coarse on a what's called a French press. That might be too much, and you might get more of a very lackluster, very watered down taste, unless you're brewing it in the vessel for more than 10 minutes. We do medium coarse when we do the French press. A little bit finer if we're going for a lighter roast, and a little bit coarser for a darker roast. Reason why we do that: lighter roast has been roasted for not as long of a time, so it takes a lot longer to or takes more energy to extract the flavors. Thus, you want a little bit finer or a higher temperature to have more energy to get that coffee flavors out. Coarser for darker roast, because it's been roasted for longer, it's easier to break down, more coffee flavors. If we do a little bit too fine or higher temperature on a dark roast, you're gonna get too much bitterness, and that's something you don't want. So let's talk about recipes. Medium coarse grind for your French press. We want a ratio of 1 ounce of, or 1 gram of coffee to 14 ounces of water. So this is a little bit more stronger and a little more coffee than we did with the pour over, but it's because there's more requirement for extraction in the French press. So here we got 25 grams of coffee. We got our kettle. We're gonna set it. It's already at 82, but we want to set it a little bit higher. So we're gonna set it at 205 Fahrenheit. We are using a Mexican Chiapas light medium roast, so we're using a little bit higher of a temperature. So got that there, measured it out, 1 to 14 ratio, which means we need about 350 milliliters of water. So we got about 350 milliliters or more of water. We're gonna measure it out anyway. So got the French press here. Let's grind some coffee. So if we grind, set this up properly. While that's heating up, we're gonna press this and so that's all ready to go. Got your French press. Usually you want to kind of preheat it before you, what do you call it? You pour in the coffee and water. So meaning like probably put some hot water in just before you brew, dump the water out, then put your grinds in. We're just gonna assume I just did that. And we got our coffee grounds. We're gonna put it in and kind of like just give it a bit of a swirl. Just make sure it's all dissipated. So sometimes you get some clumps, so you don't want to have that. Let's zero out our French press, and now we're set at 205, 206 Fahrenheit. Let's start pouring coffee. So when we do a French press, we want to do about 6 to 8 minutes, depending on the strength of coffee we want. So like I said, immersion brewing is you're settling water with coffee for a long period of time. So I'm going to start my timer and start pouring. So unlike the pour over, we're just going to dump as much water as we can. I'm swirling just to make sure everything gets in there. And 350 grams of water, or milliliters. So I'm very metric about this. So we did that. We're almost at 350. And there you go, about 355. So let it sit for a little while. Just give it like another 30 seconds. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna mix it. So we're gonna make sure all of the coffee is immersed in the hot water. So give it 10 more seconds. We're almost at the minute mark here. And it seems like we're gonna just do a bit of a mix. I'm using the top, so I forgot my stir. So now it's all mixed up, and then we're just gonna let it sit for the rest of this 6 to 8 minutes. So you can see here there's a bit of crema coming up there. This is very fresh coffee, and crema really shows that it's ground fresh, it's roasted fresh, and you get a lot of flavors from that. So we're gonna let it sit, and we're gonna just put our top on top of it, and we're not going to press down. Really, in terms of French press, what flavors come out that's very different from other brewing methods is really the fact that it's a metal filter versus a paper filter, and then the long brewing time, immersion brewing. So what the metal filter does is allows for some of that oils that coffee naturally has to be part of your cup of coffee, adding to the body to it as well, versus a paper filter. The con of this brewing method is that you might get a little bit of grind or a soothe into your cup of coffee, which the majority of the time for people is a bad thing, but for me, I like it anyway. So it's we want to do that and have the coffee kind of like just dissipate, and it really creates a strong flavor. So one thing I did forget is to get a cup of water. Give me 1 minute. Well, not a cup of water, just a cup. As I'm really prepared, I got my Remuno cup, And this, pretend we accelerate to 6-7 minutes. It looks like it's pretty brewed. Imagine if we are at 6-7 minutes. And what we'll do is like, we'll press it down, but not press it down too much. So most people, when they think about the French press, will press it all the way down. The reason why we're not doing that, because we don't want to mix the grounds too much. And if you just press a little bit, you just at least create a surface in which the brew can be filtered. If you press it all the way down, the grinds can easily go through the metal filter, and that can add more soothe to your, or grinds to your drink. So we're pretending we're at 6-7 minutes. If you want a strong cup of coffee, leave it for longer. And don't leave it for more than 9-10 minutes, you might get some over extraction. So we're pretty much done there. We'll pour it. And pretty much, there you go. There's a little bit left. Pour a little more. The main thing about the French press, if you make a French press drink, you want to take all the coffee out of the French press once you finish brewing. Leaving any coffee or any liquid in there will cause it to brew for longer, and you're going to get a totally different flavor. So if you have a brewing method like this and you want to keep that flavor, take all the water, take all the coffee out and put it into a cup or another vessel. So this is it. Cheers. Thank you guys. It's good actually.